I have something to confess. I'm sensitive. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If it's the first time you're here, my name is Meghan Stark and you should stick around. So go ahead and subscribe and give this video a like right off the top. But today I wanted to talk about a topic that's maybe a little bit unconventional, but this information was so helpful for me in my evolution of self and kind of learning how to navigate life. A couple years ago, I made a video called Motorcycling is Perfect for Introverts. And I discussed the kind of unexpected ways that motorcycling can really cater to those who are a bit more introspective, get a little bit fatigued from a lot of socialization. Basically, people who need a lot of alone time, a lot of unstructured time, and maybe don't like a lot of loud and rambunctious stuff. Even though bikes are a bit loud and rambunctious, the state of riding is often not quite meditative, but it's very akin to the flow state of optimizing focus and just the right amount of adrenaline and this aloneness of you and the road and your helmet and maybe some other cars and stuff, but ultimately it's a solitary activity even when you're surrounded by people. So it really does lend itself well to people who are more introverted. So along the similar lines of being an introverted person, there's also different general types of sensitivity that people break down into. And I learned a lot about this from Dr. Elaine, I don't remember her last name, but she wrote this book called The Highly Sensitive Person, and it came into my life just when I needed it. It was recommended within the same week by two different people who got recommended to it from their therapist. And that makes me think, man, I should have gotten a therapist or something. And maybe I would have found out all this information a lot sooner, but did it the hard way and learned these things through life. But I did read the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, and so many of these things spoke to me. The long and short of it is that your body is sensitive to a different amount of stimulus or can perceive and absorb stimulus at a more rapid rate and therefore can get fatigued faster than other people. It's a completely neutral trait. It's not necessarily good nor bad to be highly sensitive. It's just a thing. And some cultures cater more to high sensitivity than other cultures or communities. Like you might imagine that a convent or a community of Trappist monks perhaps is a more high sensitivity friendly space than a concert, but people of different levels exist in the world at large. Most people end up being moderately sensitive. So maybe you pick up on some things but not other things, and you don't get necessarily overwhelmed by stuff that seems kind of routine, like maybe traffic noises, or literally I can't dial out the sound of my AC right now, but there's a lot of different stimulus that comes at you as a human being. Sight, sound, taste, smell, gravitational shifts. There's a lot that goes into our sensory perceptions. And if you're a type of person who gets kind of overwhelmed at even some simple things, this is a classic thing. I think I read this once though in like a stoner meme, but basically like you're ever eating a piece of toast and need to like turn down the volume of the TV so you can taste it. And I'm like, yes, I've been there, where there's just one too many pieces of stimulation. Or if someone is trying to have an in-depth conversation with me while there is talk radio happening at the same time, I could just about melt sometimes because of my brain not being able to partition these things out. So sometimes it's a bit of a hindrance, but sometimes it's a really excellent kind of mode to be in. You tend to notice the details of a space, and maybe you're a great eyewitness for a crime. You can be way more detail oriented. So maybe if something like that is part of your job, it's really excellent to be highly sensitive. Sometimes highly sensitive people tend to be more creative. They'll ruminate on the subtleties of life and then create really interesting art from it. Sometimes sensitivity can literally make you more empathic to other people, not just because you might also be more emotionally sensitive, because that is like a type of sensory experience, is things affecting your emotional state, but that you might notice if someone feels uncomfortable in a certain context. If you notice that the vibes of the room are off and there's one chair missing and someone doesn't have a place to sit, or if you're just really accustomed to being a good host and making things really accommodating for people, that might be one clue that you're highly sensitive. So there's a whole battery of questions that you can kind of go through if you're curious if you fall under the high sensitivity category. But beyond just this being some sort of like a personality test or like an Enneagram or all those other things, this is really helpful for realizing how to get your needs met and just like function better. Because if you're trying to keep pace in the world with people who are less sensitive, you might be exhausting yourself really fast and making yourself irritable and tired and low functioning because you're trying to match the environment around you instead of catering to your needs. It's almost like you're contributing to your own kryptonite. You're like, wow, I have to like stop drinking this poison and just figure out my needs and help myself get there. One example that I remember in the Highly Sensitive Person book was, in the psychologist who wrote all this, she also is a highly sensitive person, and she found these tools helpful to allow her to cope and just like live her best life. She talked about going to Las Vegas, which is probably like one of the most stimulating places you can go in the United States. And the fact that there were times when she had to say no to activities that other people wanted to do. She had to go back to the hotel room and just like lay down for 30 minutes. It sounds simple, but just when you're exhausted and you just need some time, just give yourself the time. Even as recently as today, I was realizing that I was kind of running myself ragged, and it was making me irritable, and it was making me, miss things or not perform as well. So dialing into your energy level needs can be so helpful. And another thing about high sensitivity is you might get like hungry more often. And if you are relatively sensitive, you might experience a hangriness that other people don't. So like packing snacks. For me, my like body temperature range, the comfortable range seems to be somewhat narrow. So I'm almost always carrying a jacket or a sweater or something with me so that I can just get in that right zone, and so that it's not distracting to me just being supremely uncomfortable. And while it sounds like this is a lot of like screwing around and kind of not ideal to have to like get your temperature right, have your snack, like drink enough water, get your naps in, just so you can live life, but it does mean that when you're dialed in, you tend to outperform other people. I find that about myself, is that my waking hours, I get more done than a lot of people who are maybe lower sensitivity, because I can just get in that flow state. I can get really focused, I can notice things, and I can get the cogs of my brain going more efficiently. And some people, maybe they are lower sensitivity or medium sensitivity, and they just don't dial into their body, and it takes them a longer time to realize maybe something that's out of whack. Like, you're not realizing that every time you eat cauliflower, it's causing like inflammation in the body or something, or a lot of like bloating. There's all these interesting things about different foods that cause inflammation. And if you're kind of lower sensitivity, it might take you longer to figure out what things are making you feel unwell or out of whack. I know one thing for me is that when I was having like a more anxious time in my life, and actually it did coincide with me ignoring my sensitivity levels, I was super caffeine sensitive. So I cut it out for a week. I stopped drinking caffeine, and I did more yoga and meditation to like try to wake myself up in the morning, and I just addressed the demons in order to get aligned and then reintroduce these things in my life. So this is a bit tangential, but that's kind of been my overall experience with high sensitivity, and it often is my ally, and especially when I pay attention to my body and how I'm reacting to things. When it comes to this high sensitivity stuff, it's got a bit of a double-edged sword, but if you can figure out your needs, you're gonna be a superhuman. It's gonna be so cool. It's like I think it was an Einstein quote, or it's often attributed to Einstein, even if he never said it, that you can't really judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. And if you're trying to live a really extroverted, not sensitivity aware life, you could be running yourself ragged and basically trying to be a fish climbing a tree. But if you realize, like, this is not my environment, this is not where I thrive the most, this is not what's best suited for me, change it all up. It doesn't happen overnight, but my life has been drastically different since before and after acknowledging these sensitivities, realizing that it's not a judgment call. I'm not like a little baby that can't like function in the world. It's that I just move through the world differently, and it's good to cater to that. It's like that with a lot of different people who tend to be neurodivergent. I don't think this like constitutes neurodivergence, but there's all sorts of different like diagnoses that can be really helpful for people, not so that they become some sort of a victim, but so that they can have a language and a toolkit to explain their needs to other people, a way to move through life, and just these kind of protocols to help yourself. It's kind of like this battery of checklists, like, oh, I'm feeling like not great. You know, do I need to drink water? Do I need to poop? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Go through all those things and suddenly you realize that you're fine. And if you didn't have this toolkit at your disposal, you might just like ruin your day because you didn't cater to your own needs. So I found it immensely helpful to dive into this world of high sensitivity and to communicate that to other people when it feels necessary. Like realizing that sometimes your body can have a hangover without any alcohol. And if you've ever found yourself in that space and you're like, why does this happen to me? Why, after talking to people all day long, my body is like sizzling and I feel like exhausted, but I also can't sleep. You know, you might be somebody who's highly sensitive and basically just like fried your nervous system and you need to take it easy the next day. And there's no shame in that, but you just don't want to do that too often, and you don't want to forget that that's a factor. So when your body's shutting down, believe it. I tell you, believe it, and your life will be better if you just start believing your body. So those are my personal takeaways from being a highly sensitive person. Ultimately, I have just opened up my life by kind of realizing this and by dialing into the things that will nourish me and just make my life better and like reduce my suffering and just give me purpose. So I hope that if this really speaks to you, go research that book. I can link it down below. It's a fantastic read, and there's like workbooks and stuff if something like that interests you. And if there's someone in your life that this kind of sounds like, maybe it's someone who just gets like irritable like way too easily, and you realize that it might be, you know, it's after a long day of doing a lot of stuff. I feel like a lot of people's kids and loved ones might be highly sensitive, and they're with a parent or partner who's never experienced that. And so it can cause a lot of tension. So kind of unearthing these things can really only make life better. And that's my piece on it. If you want to stick around this channel, I hope to be doing some more psychological or think piece stuff, perhaps around motorcycles, perhaps around other things. You should give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Go ahead and subscribe to stick around. And until next time, ride safe, I guess, if you do that. Otherwise, navigate the world in the way that suits you best. I don't know why I'm doing praying hands so often. It's like, now I'm a guru, so subscribe for more guru shit. Bye.